Well, good morning and welcome to Our Stories. Our guest today is Terry Hogg, and pleased to have you here, Terry. As I talked with Terry prior to our doing this, he indicated that his story was going to be about the women in his life who had a strong influence on him, and he identified who they were. So he talked about his grandmother being one. So tell us a little bit first about where you grew up, and then we can kind of put Grandma into the picture.
Okay, I grew up in Bethany, a small town near Decatur. My family was there, had been there for many generations, and Grandma's was the center of the family life to a great deal. Grandma and church. So for years, the Cumberland Presbyterian Church and all my aunts and grandmas and cousins, they were the opposite side of the same coin. It was all one thing to me, church and home.
Mm. Was Grandma, would you identify her as sort of the unofficial head of the family or the official head of the family?
Grandma did everything well.
Okay.
I don't know about, this is a different time we're talking about. And women's kind of did a step back, and you were sort of supposed to lead the male as the leader. Really and truly, Granddad used to come home from session Monday nights, and I'd stay at Grandma's, and I could hear them discussion. They'd do the whole session meeting over again, and they'd talk to each other. I think they pretty much decided how they were going to, what they were going to do as a couple, and what they thought was best.
And then he would go back to the next meeting and kind of implement what...
He wouldn't say my wife says, but she got her say.
Yeah, right. Okay, so besides you, who else made up your family?
Well, just two of us on our side. My sis, the best sister in the world. And then on her brother's side, they had three sons, Rick, Jim, and John. So there were 5 cousins in all.
Okay. And they all live close there in Bethany?
And on farm homes just outside of town. Then Grandma lived inside.
Okay, yeah. Did Grandma kind of, get her way in terms of dominating the family, or was she more subtle in her influence? Tell me a little bit about how she kind of came across to family members.
Yeah, Grandma didn't bend, break, or splinter.
I've never heard that.
Oh, well. She was just a real force to be reckoned with. And if she said something, you usually wanted to listen.
Yeah, okay. What kinds of things do you think she was really, in terms of you, did you feel an influence from her about?
Oh, well, first of all, we had summers, instead of living out on the farm, a lot of times I stayed in town with Grandma, at Grandma's house. Because there was, people around, and you didn't want to, there wasn't anybody else out on the farm.
Right.
So Grandma had a huge garden, huge flower bed, and we'd go through, and I still to this day, the grandma names that we had for the plants are the ones I still remember.
Yeah.
When I was small, gosh, in elementary, and I remember sitting on a flower pot, planting bachelor button seeds, and this is a real early memory.
Yeah.
So of long standing, and then wherever I worked, I did some kind of gardening at Harris School and Franklin School, and here at First Pres and over at Grace Methodist. I used to do the rose garden over there. So that's just it's just a part of me. She had always wanted to be a nurse, and in fact, people in the community would call on her to help when they had someone who was ill. I remember with my cousin, we were out waiting in the car, went out in the country. Someone was eventually dying, and so they called Hazel McLaughlin. And I don't think she always knew what that she was doing something specific, but she always made someone feel a little bit better or be a little more comfortable. And for example, I think this one lady, she made hot lemonade for her because it would kind of take up the congestion,
Right.
kind of give her a little bit of comfort. She would, and Charlie Carlisle, I think she went and she pretty much shaved him for self-care.
Mm.
And then too, when you were sick, like too sick to go to school,
Sure.
no one in that house stayed in bed past 8 o'clock in the morning. If you were sick, then you got up and laid down on the day bed.
Okay.
But she was just a force of nature. Her husband, Lloyd, said she's about half human. But she was just a force of nature.
Yeah.
Her mom had what we call dropsy or congestive heart failure.
Yeah.
And was, besides having 9 pregnancies, just in terribly ill health. And Hazel my grandma was the oldest one. And I think I got it.
So she probably grew up in a role of, taking care of all those younger ones that came behind her. I mean, knowing how the farm families operated,
And in fact, and even after she married and moved away from their home in Cumberland County, Illinois, family members would still come to her house. It was kind of a second base,
Mm. Yeah.
And in the story of, I remember her talking about her mother, Dolly, was just not a very good housekeeper. Well, she just didn't have the energy.
Yeah.
And 6 kids, and so anyway, Mom had married and left the house, but she decided that back home they had bed bugs, and she was going to do battle with the bed bugs, and she did. She talked about they washed down all the walls and they varnished the woodwork, whether that would kill the eggs or not. And then after they have everything scrubbed and varnished and like that and washed, they'd take can lids, put kerosene or coal oil or something like that, so that the bugs couldn't, would stop them from spreading.
So they couldn't get across that.
Yeah.
So we're ready to talk about your mom now?
Okay, we can, yes.
Okay.
Well, you think if you were Helen Hogg and you were trying to make your identity growing up, you had a force with Grandma Mackma. What are you going to compete with her doing? She would know how to out-clean, out-cook, out everything. So what role did Helen have? Well, kind of the business role, or really her father's farm business was a big part of what she did. And eventually, I would say, she went through a divorce, and there was no alimony, there was no child support, split the assets, she gets half and raises all the kids. So I've lost my place.
Well, that's surviving in those situations, that shows a lot of fortitude on her.
She is eventually the person who saw that the farm stayed in the family.
Wow.
Mostly because of really good business sense.
Yeah.
She was good at it.
So was there anybody who was a significant male influence as you were growing up?
My dad, and I brought some pictures, and we discussed this earlier, was a high school athlete, very good in school in Bethany. It was a high school. And she went up to Millikan and they said, we'll give you an athletic scholarship.
Right.
This is in the middle of the Depression in the 30s. And you come to do track for us. He couldn't really do football on the college level because he was kind of a little guy. His nickname was Finnegan. But track, he was a whiz at track and did a lot of work in that.
But there was a stipulation that went along.
Mm-hmm. And he thought that was below his dignity, so.
What was the stipulation? What did he?
Well, you had to run the dust mop and kind of clean up the gym and,
And that just wasn't his.
No, didn't want to do that.
Even with a scholarship, that wasn't just something he was going to do. Huh?
Yeah.
So what did he do?
He was a butcher, and he ran a grocery store for quite some time. He ended up selling vacuum cleaners door to door, and did pretty good at it. Till he and Mom divorced, and it was obvious Mom was keeping things together.
Yeah.
After the divorce, it was just a slow decline in lost his family, his resources, his health.
Wow.
You know, it all went. So what, you know, especially a boy growing up, you need a dad
Right.
for some kind of role model. But, and like you're saying, it doesn't have to be a biological dad.
Right.
And as I look back, you know, I got sort of raised by, and I remember some men who were examples to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I particularly remember Gerald Harner. Well, I was grown by this time. And we were on a trip to Hawaii for teachers
Yeah.
and retired people. So he would really paid attention to me and would and talked a lot about. He was a retired college teacher, taught at Belleville Junior College, and we just made a strong bond. And then the camp ended and time to go back. I got a call from his wife, and she said, "Jerry's got some chronic diseases, and he's real discouraged. Would you just come down and visit with him? Because he always talks about you." So I came down and visited, and this guy who had all kinds of reasons to be self-centered and worry about his health did not say a thing about that. He was talking about, well, this Terry was on our trip, and he does a really good job with his kids, and you know, do you have any literature? He'd be happy to, to use that with his classroom teacher. And I'm thinking, here, this guy, you know, has every right to be self-centered, but he wasn't. He just set an example to me.
So, you ready to talk about your niece now?
My niece, oh, a wonderful person, and she's the one that she takes after my mom. She's the one with the business head.
Okay.
So right now, she's my power of attorney, and I wanted to know all about my business, and so when we talk about, I've kind of been involved. She's doing, as a retirement job, she's doing rental business.
Hmm.
So we talk about that.
Yeah. What things do you do now in your own life that okay, I do that because grandma taught me that, or my mother taught me that, or I mean, what kind of things are there that you've picked up that have come along from those ladies?
Well, just the flower beds, that's just been a constant. I just sort of, I don't necessarily do it intentionally, but it just always seems to happen. The other thing would be cooking.
Mm.
We have in the past done scenes where you have a lot of people come, and you have to cook for them.
Sure.
And sort of a funny story, the Chicago club is pretty large and a pretty good group of singers that come down. And so we can't out-sing them. And I thought, well, I can't out-sing them, but by golly, I can out-cook them. So when they come down here, we're sure they've got all they want.
Oh, I see.
And cooking in big batches, that was...
Yeah. Anything else you want to share about your...
And I suppose family, you usually think of graveyards as kind of spooky or scary. I never felt that, mostly because I knew the names of great-great-great-grandma and grandpa and, cousins and aunts and uncles, and, there they all are.
Yeah. That was all part of your
Yeah.
growing
yeah.
up education, learning
Well, that's
about-
what you did Decoration Day. You took
Yeah.
peonies and iris and
Sure. Went out and heard the stories.
decorate the stones. Oh, the stories. Oh, I love the stories.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for sharing with us about your family. Certainly sounds like a interesting trip through the generations there. And,
Nicely put. Thank you for asking.
okay.